When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and you are entering the PR Training Lab. This is a way for you to get to know me better, know my process better, and learn how I make custom training plans for runners just like you. Last year, I gave away over 10 custom training plans for this series, and it was so fun and successful. I'm doing it again this year. About once a month, roughly, but possibly more as race training starts up this fall. If you would like to enter to win a free training plan created live here on the show, all you have to do is write an Apple podcast review. Once you've done that, go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. And all of this is in the show notes. So if you're on the run right now, you can check that out later. I also have the questions that I ask each runner in the show notes so you can follow along there as well. Today, we are going to be making a training plan for a runner named Kendall, and she wants to run a fast 5K. So let's take a look. Kendall is 41 years old, and she found out about me on Instagram. Now, if you aren't following me on Instagram, I am, of course, The Planted Runner, and I'm there about 5 days a week, if not more, sharing tips and tricks and a little bit of humor along the way. So be sure to give me a follow over there if you aren't already. All right, let's take a look at what Kendall filled out and what she is training for. Her race is the 4th of July. There are usually lots of 5Ks, sometimes 10Ks on the 4th of July, Independence Day here in the United States. So this is about perfect. I'm recording this in April, so she's got about 8 weeks to go before her race, which is perfect depending on where she is in her training. But usually you want about 6 to 8 weeks of specific 5K training to get better at it, assuming that she's at a certain level of fitness in her running already. All right, what is Kendall's goal for this race? She wants to run a 5K in under 20 minutes. So that's a pretty fast 5K. That averages out to be 6:26 per mile or 4 minutes per kilometer. And we'll see if she has the fitness to run the 5K in this speed. We'll see if she is being realistic or not. We'll check out the rest of her answers in just a bit. How long have you been running regularly? She's been running 10 years. Okay, so she's 41 and she's been running 10 years. So assuming that she was not a runner before that or was not a trained athlete before that, 10 years means she's probably getting close to her potential biologically. She's 41. Doesn't mean that she's going to fall off a cliff in her 40s. That's absolutely not true. We can keep progressing into our 60s, assuming that we are not elite athletes who peaked at our true biological peak. If you've not been training for a long time, you are not going to just decline when you hit your 40s. But if you have been training at a relatively competitive level for 10 years straight, marathon after marathon, and really, really shaving off every bit of potential, you're not just going to keep improving in your 40s, but we don't know exactly what level she's been training at. If she's just a casual runner and in the last few years got really serious about it, then she still might have a few good years left of really high performance training. But let's see. Do you use kilometers or miles? She's American. She runs in miles. Do you have any current or reoccurring injuries? Obviously, this is always important when I am coming up with a training plan. I don't want to give something too much too soon to people who have an active injury. I don't like runners running on active injuries, racing on active injuries. That could be an entire episode of a podcast, but she says she's got no injury. All right, what is her recent race times and distances? So let's see if she is fit enough to run a sub 20 minute 5K in the next couple of months. She's just run the London Marathon. Okay, fantastic. That was just at the end of April, and she ran it in 3:15. Okay. So this is looking good for Kendall. So a 3:15 marathon, that works out to be 7:26 average per mile or 4:37 per kilometer. This is a good sign. That roughly translate a 3:15 marathon. Plug it into a calculator. I like the one by Luke Humphrey. You can look that up online and plug in your race time, and it'll spit out some equivalent times. So a 3:15 marathon roughly translates into a 2019 5K. So she is 20 seconds off of her goal. Now in the 5K, 20 seconds is a lot, especially if you are at your peak. 20 seconds to shave off of your 5K time is going to be quite significant. But if she has not specifically trained for the 5K, we might have some untapped potential here. So the thing is about these calculators that you can find online, yes, they're going to give you a rough equivalent, but that assumes that you are, number one, trained your best possible for each race. And it also assumes that you are genetically equal to each race. And we obviously know that's not true. Some people are going to be better at the marathon than the 5K and vice versa. It really depends on your makeup, your training, your experience. You might be better at one than the other. In fact, I promise you will be better at one than the other. Usually when someone is just starting out, they are better at the shorter distances because endurance takes a long time to develop. But once you have years and years of endurance performance, and especially if you've been over focusing on the marathon, you might let your speed go. Now, this is not saying that you're too old to run fast. It's you're not specifically focusing on speed. If you're training for the marathon and you're running 20 milers, 18 milers, 22 milers, 32 kilometers on your long run, that is going to be a specific kind of training that honestly does not translate into a fast 5K unless you're really focusing on speed work at the same time. Let's get into Kendall's training and experience. So I asked her, how many miles per week does she typically run? And she says 30 to 40 miles per week, more for the marathon. So 30 to 40 miles in metric is 48 to 65 kilometers. So that is a very healthy amount of weekly mileage for somebody who is a recreational runner, not somebody who is elite or sub-elite. That is a very normal, healthy amount. A little bit more in marathon training is usually good when you start getting faster and faster. A 3:15 marathoner, I would say, is starting to creep up into the sub-elite category. But you can get away with running 40, 50 miles a week in that range. Now, the elites, the sub-elites, they usually run way more than that. And that is because typically the more you run, the better you get at running. But of course, up to a point. And that point could be a physical point where you really need to back off because you're getting injured or you're not feeling recovered. It could also be a lifestyle point, a point in which your running does not fit into your lifestyle well and you're sacrificing time with your family, you're sacrificing your job, you're sacrificing your friends. There's a certain point where your running can take over your life, and it's not a good thing. Now, a lot of runners listening to this might say that that's impossible, but I promise you, you can get too skewed in favor of running where it really is detracting from your life when you pay too much attention to that. So I think what Kendall is doing is great. That is usually a very typical, normal, healthy amount of mileage for somebody at her fitness level. What is the highest amount of weekly mileage you've ever run, and how long ago was that? She said 55 miles in March, which works out to be about 89 kilometers. So 55 miles in March, that's the month before the London Marathon. So she's building up to that in her marathon build, but we're not going to be doing that for 5K. We don't need to run 20 miles for a long run for 5K training. In fact, I don't even think you need to run more than 12 to 14. So that works out to be somewhere in the 18 to 20, 22 kilometer range for your long run. The reason you don't want to have these super long runs is not because the 5K isn't aerobic. The 5K is absolutely aerobic. But you don't need to do excessive long runs because your focus actually needs to be on speed. And more specifically, it needs to be on stamina. So stamina, my definition of stamina is speed plus endurance. And that's exactly what you need for the 5K. You don't need the raw sprinting speed so much, although I will have you do a little bit of that. But what you need is your highest possible speed that you can sustain for 3.1 miles. And that means your engine's got to be running pretty fast. You got to be breathing. You've got to be able to control it. But you don't need to go into your workouts exhausted from hours and hours of running long. That is not going to help you. Of course, the elites, those people are going to be running longer probably for their 5K training, but they're a different class than recreational runners. And most people, especially once we're in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, it's not going to be as beneficial having these really long runs because they will steal your speed from your speed days. And that is our focus during the 5K specific training. What days of the week does Kendall run? Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it looks like every day except Wednesday. That is perfectly fine. We'll see how she splits those up. But if she's running 30 miles a week, spread out over 6 days, that's not that much running on some of those days, which can be okay. But we are going to want to have her speed days we probably want them to be between 6 and 8 miles, and that's going to be including warm up and cool down. So we want to have the actual speed work be at least 5K or 3.1 miles. And then if we add a mile or two on either side for the cool down, we're starting to get up to 5, 6, 7 miles for a speed day. Then we're going to want to have a tempo day on another day. So that's going to be in the 6 mile range. So if we divide 30 miles by 6, we get 5 days a week. So she can run 6 days a week to stay in the 30 to 40 range. That would be fine. But some of her easy runs are going to be shorties. So they're going to be 5K, 3 miles, something like that. What day of the week do you prefer to run your long runs? Sunday, that works well. And what day of the week do you prefer to run your speed days? Tuesday, Thursday. Perfect. That is exactly what I like to see. Now you can shift this to either days of the week, but what I'm looking for is balance. So if you have your long run on Sunday, that means Monday can be rest or easy. And then Tuesday can be your track days, your speed day. Wednesday can be rest or easy. Thursday can be your tempo day. So that's more of your stamina day, a little bit of medium paced or medium high paced speed, but without stopping for the most part. Friday can be easy or rest, and then Saturday can be easy or rest. So what we want to do is just make sure our speed days are not consecutive with each other or the long runs. We want to have either rest or easy in between our speed days or our long runs. So nice spread across the week. How long is your average most recent long run? She said 20 miles. Well, that makes sense because she just ran the marathon. Again, she is not going to get that high for her long runs in 5K training. We're going to max out somewhere between 10, 12, 14 miles, probably not even 14. I think I'd like to cap her at 12 miles so that she has plenty of energy for the rest of the week. What pace would you say is a very easy effort, relaxed pace for an average run? This is a pace so slow that you could talk the entire time as easily as walking. She says 9:45 per mile, which works out to be about 6 minutes per kilometer. This is perfect for a 3:15 marathoner. Now, that is slow enough for her that she could talk just like I'm talking now. Now, if let's say you're a 4:15 marathoner and you say your easy pace is 9:45 per mile or 6 minutes per kilometer, I'm sorry, I've got to argue with you there. That is not easy. We want it very conversational. We want all the oxygen going to our muscles, and you can tell it's easy when you can use oxygen to talk or sing, or another test that I like to use is close your mouth. If you can run for a few minutes per mile or per kilometer with your mouth closed, only nose breathing, then that's a great sign that it's easy. So 9:45 per mile pace is great for a marathoner this fast, but if you're not this fast, your easy pace should be a lot slower. What days of the week do you take a full rest day? She says Thursday. That's great. So she's running 6 days a week. She gets 1 full day of rest. That is fabulous for her. I would say she could even get away with running 5 days a week if she's really running hard on her speed days, which she's going to have to run hard during her speed days because we're 20 seconds off, remember? Now, 20 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but spread out over only 3.1 miles or 5 kilometers, it is a lot. So she is not there yet. So she's going to have to work really hard on her speed days at a higher effort. Now, what does 5K specific training look like? Well, my favorite way to train somebody over 6 to 8 weeks for the 5K is very, very simple, but it is not easy. So what you want to do is to take the race, break it up into smaller chunks, and each week make those chunks a little longer. And now we are not going to start at Kendall's goal pace. We are going to start at her current pace. So all we have to go on from this is her 3:15 marathon. And so we are going to take her 5K pace based on 3:15. So right now, the 5K pace under 20 minutes, that's 6:26 per mile. So that is too fast. I am not going to tell her to go run 5K pace, meaning 6:26 per mile. It's got to be slower than that. So probably between 6:30 and 6:40 is her current 5K pace. Now, remember what I said before about the estimators, the calculators not being perfectly accurate. Yes, they're not going to be perfectly accurate. Maybe she is faster than 6:30 to 6:40 pace for the 5K right now, but we don't know that. So we're going to assume the calculators are correct and see how it goes. So we'll probably start out with maybe a 200. So a workout of 200 meters times the number of reps it would take us to get to 5K. So I don't have this written down right now, so I'm not doing the math in my head, but you'll be doing enough reps, maybe it's 20 reps, to be able to run 3.1 miles or 5K in training. plus a little bit of rest. So 100 to 200 meters of rest, which might be 20 or 30 seconds, might be a minute. But the goal here is to run the race in training, but broken up by rest. So we want to keep this a stamina workout. So your rest break is not going to be full rest. It's going to be a jog if you can help it. It is not going to be a jog that's 15 minutes per mile for Kendall. It is going to be a true jog. So that's 9:45. We already established her easy pace is 9:45. Maybe it'll be 10. Keep those rests honest, but we want to make the first interval the same pace-wise as the last interval, which means the first interval has to feel very, very easy, and the last interval is going to feel very, very hard. So it's pretty easy to run 5K pace for 200 meters, which is roughly a quarter mile. That should feel relatively easy the first time. The 20th time, maybe not so easy, right? So she's going to start with 200s, and then maybe the next week it's going to be 400s. You're going to do fewer 400s because we only want to stay about 3 miles for the workout. And that includes the rest too, which is why I'm not doing the math in my head right now. And then the third week, maybe she's at 800 meters for her rep. So we're doing these every Tuesday, and we are jogging those rests to keep the stamina up, to keep it specific to the demands of the 5K. We could go up to 1,000 for the fourth week, but what I usually do is I go back to the 200s. Maybe I throw in 600s, depending on the athlete. But at some point, we're going to want to do some hammers. So a hammer interval is when you forget about pace and just give it all you got. I like to do this for the second to last interval, the penultimate interval, and not the last interval. So a lot of people will make sure the last one is the fast one. I want the second to last one to be the fast one. Why? Because there's something mental about it when you tell your brain, okay, I'm going to give it my all, but I still have one more to do. So that means subconsciously, you're really not going to give it your all, but you're going to give it close to your all because you are going to either consciously or subconsciously save a little bit for that last one. And that is perfect because we want to teach ourselves pace control, pace restraint, and sometimes you got to trick the brain a little bit in order to do that. So I like the second to last one to be your hammer. So we're going to do a hammer workout with 400s. We're probably going to do it with 800s. So those will take up 2 of your speed days. So basically, again, what you're doing for 6 to 8 weeks is breaking up the 5K every Tuesday or whatever your track day is into little pieces, running the race at your current race ability, which we've already established for Kendall is going to be her 3:15 marathon equivalency pace, not her goal pace. And we're going to see how she does. Now, let's say we get into 2, 3, 4 weeks of training and she is just killing it. She's getting 6:30s all day long. Her last one is not even hard for her. She feels like she can bump it up. At that point, we might consider, hey, we are going to bump it up a little bit for your next couple workouts, see how she does. Or maybe she sticks exactly to the paces, but her hammer is 30 seconds faster per mile. That tells us something. That tells us that we have a stronger athlete inside that is either purposely or not purposely holding back. I would rather have that than someone who redlines it and overruns it and then can't finish strong. So we really need pace control in the 5K, even more so than the marathon. And that's because there's not as much time to correct mistakes in the 5K. You only have 5 kilometers, and if you screw it up, you're going to be cooked for the end. Now, the good thing about the 5K versus the marathon is if you completely blow it, you can run another one next weekend. You can run another one the weekend after that. Not so with the marathon. The marathon is way too hard to do more than a couple times a year really, really well. You kind of put all your eggs in one basket with the marathon. Not so with the 5K. You can go all out. You can practice all sorts of things with the 5K. You can practice your mental strength with the 5K. And if it goes well, awesome. And if it doesn't, you can do another one and get your redemption right away. Now for strategy for the 5K, it really honestly is the same thing you want to do for the marathon. You want to hold back the first half, and then for the second half, start plugging away and chipping away at your speed. And by the end, you are running as hard as you can. So now for the 5K, I like to break it up in 3 miles. The first mile should be fast. The second mile should be faster. And then the third mile should be everything you've got. Now, it's hard to control your paces with the 5K because you have to start out at a relatively fast pace, but it can't be so fast that you burn yourself out by the middle of the race. So that takes experience to feel what that feels like. Just like in the marathon, too many people go way too fast their first mile of the 5K and pay for it later. But it's a fine line. And again, go out there, have a race you don't care about, and if you screw it up, try it again next week. But you are going to hold back in the first half of the race, and then you're going to really discover who you are by the end. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this.
The Planted Runner is sponsored by Liquid IV. As the weather starts to warm up, you know that dehydration is a much bigger factor in your running, and water alone is not always going to be enough on those sweaty runs, which is where Liquid IV comes in. Liquid IV's formula, powered by Live Hydroscience, is clinically shown to maintain hydration better than water for up to 4 hours. All you need to do is add a packet to your water bottle before your run, and you're ready to go with their true-to-fruit flavors, because when it tastes this good, there is no excuse for not staying hydrated. Find all your favorite hydration multiplier flavors on their website, from lemon lime to pina colada. Break the mold and own your ritual. Just 1 stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PLANTED at liquidiv.com.
This is the Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. All right, back to Kendall. What are your non-negotiables when it comes to your training days? So a non-negotiable would be, for example, you can't run long on Sundays, or you can't run on Wednesdays. Or are you fairly flexible? She says long runs need to happen during the weekend. That would be true for the vast majority of runners who are recreational runners, so we got you there. What are your favorite kinds of running workouts? She says tempos and short reps like 200s, they make her feel fast. Well, great, because we're going to give her plenty of those. So I talked about what you do on Tuesday. What are you doing for your second speed day of the week? Now, not every runner who's training for a 5K needs 2 days of speed work. You should have an easy day with some strides at the end. And maybe you'll have a little bit of speed in some of your long runs potentially. Not every runner needs a second workout a week, but for Kendall, I would definitely assign her a second tempo or a second speed day a week. And it's usually going to be a tempo. So a tempo is kind of a medium to medium fast run. It is essentially the pace that you could hold for 40 to 60 minutes if you were at a race level. So for Kendall, that's probably roughly her 10K pace, or maybe a little bit slower than her 10K pace. And we would be giving her a few miles of tempo each week. Lots of ways to structure different kinds of tempos. There's cut down runs where you get faster as you go. I like an alternating tempo where we go up and down with the pace every other mile. Lots of ways to structure tempos to get the most bang for your buck and make them a little more interesting. What are your least favorite kinds of running workouts, or what do you struggle with? She says very long, hilly workouts are tough. Yes, those are tough for everybody. Good thing is she doesn't really need to do long, hilly workouts. I will give her some hill work, but that would be a repeat workout. It would not be necessarily a long, hilly workout unless she was running a 5K on a hilly course, which, why would you do that? No, I'm just kidding. A hilly workout would only make sense for a 5K runner if it's specific to the race. Hill repeats are different, where you run up the hill at a fast pace and or run down the hill at a fast pace. That is more like a running drill workout that builds speed and strength. It is less than, it's less like a specific workout for the race. So they are a little different there. What kinds of non-running physical activities or cross training do you do each week, and when do you do them? She says she walks the dogs and an occasional swim. So that is just fine for all of you dog walkers out there. You do not have to skip your mile or whatever you run with or whatever you walk with the dogs. That is great. We should be walking as people anyway, regardless of our athletic pursuits. Walking is probably what we were put on earth to do, even more so than running. So that is perfectly fine and can even help with recovery. Do you strength train? She says, yes, 2 to 3 times a week. That is perfect. How does strength training differ from 5K to the marathon? Well, you can do more of it if you like. So with the marathon, we do want you to do specific strength training. We do want you to lift heavy, but the thing is, we can't do so much strength training when we're in marathon training because it takes away from marathon training. We're too tired to be able to do a lot. Now, with 5K training, you should be running less than you are in marathon training. So there is time to build up strength. So 5K work is going to be similar as far as the exercises that you do, but it can be heavier. It can be more powerful. It can be explosive. You can do a little bit of HIIT style workout. I hate to call it HIIT. I like plyometrics. So you want to add some jump roping in. That would be great for strength and power. But we really want to build legs that are powerful, more so than durable, if that makes sense. So a marathoner needs her legs to be able to last for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time at a lower intensity level, whereas a 5K runner only needs strong legs for 20 minutes in Kendall's case, right? So that is a different kind of strength. It is more powerful and it doesn't need to last as long. So you can slightly switch up your strength training and really focus on building muscle and building power. What are your biggest struggles with nutrition? She says, sometimes eating enough when I am busy. Okay, that is a struggle that a lot of runners have, especially runners who are running 40, 50, 60 miles a week. You have to eat a lot to sustain that kind of mileage, that kind of training. So the best way I can tell you is you got to plan ahead. So a little bit of meal prep, making sure you're eating before, during, and after your training. For 5K, you might not need to eat as much during training, especially at her pace. She's not going to need to fuel during a 20-minute 5K. She might take water, maybe not, but in 20 minutes, your body has plenty of fuel and plenty of water on board. No need for intra-run fueling. So she can practice that if she wants to, but mainly she's going to need to focus on before and especially after, making sure she gets in enough food throughout the day. What are your biggest struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? This is interesting. Okay, listen to this. The negative voices that come with effort. I am embarrassed to admit that my brain starts to fantasize about cutting the course or somehow cheating to do better when I would never actually do anything like this. Okay, this is interesting, and I am going to tell you all something I've never talked about before. I have had these exact thoughts too. I don't know where they come from. I'm not a psychologist. I have never cheated in a race or cut a course ever and never would dream of it. But sometimes there's a negative thought that actually tells me to do that. It's like driving and imagining a car crash. Sometimes that happens to me too. I don't know what part of my brain comes up with these things, but the way that I explain it is that your brain is coming up with anything to crush your ego to get you to stop doing what you're doing. It's trying to protect you from doing hard things. It's trying to get you angry so that you stop running. And yes, sometimes negative voices really sound crazy in this case, sound like someone who is not you. So any kind of voice that comes into your head, the first step is recognizing that it is just a voice. It's actually your brain using very nasty tricks to get you to stop doing this crazy thing called running. Okay. So cut yourself some slack. You are not crazy. You are not an evil person just because your brain starts going to places that you would never go normally. It is just the way we are wired sometimes that these thoughts come to our heads, even though you would never actually do this. Sometimes we can be the meanest to ourselves and we would never act this way in real life. But Kendall, I hear you. I have had those same thoughts myself. And yes, of course, that's embarrassing to admit. I have never admitted it to this day. And I am admitting it now to show you solidarity that it is normal and it is okay. But you need to understand that these voices will come. And when you're expecting them to come, then you can deal with them a little better than if you just try to shut it out and say, I would never do that. That's not me. And then they come and they prove you wrong. Then you can get into an even worse negative spiral. So use all my mental strength tips. Use all the things that you've learned in training on how to get your self-talk to become positive. And a little side note is that I am developing a standalone mental strength course coming up, hopefully in the next couple months, so you can really work on your mental strength. And it'll be a standalone course that you can take if you've got the running down and you just really need to work on your mental strength. This is going to be for you, so stay tuned for that. What are you hoping to learn or gain in this training cycle? Kendall says, I'm not really a fan of the 5K at all. I hear ya. But I think it will help my marathon to dedicate some time to this. Amen and hallelujah. Thank you, Kendall. Yes, it definitely will. So many marathoners fall in love with the marathon. I've been guilty of this, and they just train marathon after marathon, spring and fall. And they don't focus on speed. They do better and better and better until a point where they don't do better. And then they blame their age for slowing down. And I hate to break it to you. It's typically not your age. It's the fact that you are focusing on long distance, super long distance, and you're not taking the time to let that go for a little bit and work on your higher end speed. So speed is very expensive to the body, and it's the first thing it throws off the bus when it can. It's metabolically very expensive to stay fast, but you can get better at endurance for a really, really, really long time. You can run longer and longer and longer, almost indefinitely, but running faster gets harder and harder. So use your speed while you have it. 41 is not old. You can get faster at 41. I promise. The only people not getting faster are the people who reached their peak in their 20s and 30s. These are the elite athletes who have been training at the top level. If you are anything below that, you probably haven't reached your potential yet. So there's still time. But if you continue to work on the marathon after marathon, you are not going to be able to dedicate enough specific training to the demands of the 5K, and you will stagnate at the marathon. So I recommend that, yeah, you can do a spring and fall marathon, but maybe every 18 months or so, you take a break and focus on the 5K. Now, if you're not willing to do that, you love marathons way too much, then at least do a 6 to 8 week 5K build up in the summer, or maybe after your fall marathon, if that works out. But summer is usually a pretty good time to do it. Anything else you'd like to share that would be helpful to your success? Sometimes I feel like I run the same pace for shorter distances that I do for longer ones. My heart rate goes pretty high, about 180 in the 5K, 175 in the marathon, and I'm just worried there's nowhere to go from there. Okay, so if you've been listening to me for a while, you know that heart rate is not always the greatest indicator and is very different for different people. It's not just about your age, it's genetics, it's training, there's a lot going on with heart rate. It is not a simple metric. But that being said, yes, if your heart rate goes really, really high, certainly there is a point where you will not be able to run faster. It will be physically impossible for your heart to beat any faster at a certain point. Whether that's 180, 175, I don't know. Everybody is different. Some people can have very low resting heart rates, but they have very high exercise-induced heart rates, and that is okay. So what it could mean is that your engine revs up high and you can stay there for a long time, and that is okay. Some people, they can't do that. Their heart rate maybe stays lower, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they are producing less effort or they're not trying as hard. It's not always related as neatly as we'd like it to be, but this is actually fairly common, especially with people who run marathons a lot. And I think the heart rate is kind of a red herring here. It's not necessarily about the heart rate. It's the fact that you're not trained in the 5K. You've been training for the marathon so much. And so the 5K feels a little hot to you, which it should. The 5K is kind of like being thrown into the frying pan, whereas the marathon is like being thrown in a hot tub for 4 hours. They're both a different kind of hot, right? But I would not say that necessarily that your heart rate is connected in the way that we would like it to be, but it could just be that's the way you are, and that is okay. Well, I am super excited to be making a 20-minute 5K plan for Kendall. I think that she does have a realistic shot of getting to the 20-minute mark or close to it. There's something about 20 minutes in the 5K that is just one of those nice, shiny, round numbers that everybody wants to have. It's like the 3-hour marathon. It's like, the 4-hour marathon. Whatever your round number is, the 20-minute 5K is one of those things that says, yes, I am a fast runner, so I hope that she can get there. I suspect that she does have some speed in her, so it'd be great to see if in the next 8 weeks we can get her there. All right, that has been today's episode of the PR Training Lab. If you would like to have me create a training plan for you, all you have to do is write an Apple review and then go to theplantedrunner.com/PR Lab. Make sure that your race is in the next 3 to 4 months. I'm probably not going to create a plan for something that's 6 months out, 8 months out, just because you will change a lot in those months. So if you have a race that's between 3 to 5 months out, that would be perfect. Just go ahead and enter to win.
Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can enter to win a free custom training plan for your next race and get featured on the show. Just write an Apple Podcast review and enter at theplantedrunner.com/PRLab. Of course, reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next because I read every single one. Have a great run today.